As in a lot of areas, the new subdivisions in St. Clair County butt up against the cornfields. And here along Old Collinsville Road, they are also approaching a piece of history. Appropriately, perhaps, because John Messenger, the man honored by this plaque, was a surveyor who divided up the wilderness into parcels of land for new settlers. He also served in the territorial legislature and helped write Illinois' first state constitution. The cars mostly zoom by the plaque and the entry to Clinton Hill Cemetery, once part of Messenger's property. Towards the back, under a grove of cypress trees of all things, is the family plot. There's John's grave, born 1771, immigrated to Illinois 1802, died 1846. Members of other families were buried here as well over the years, the stones, the names, and dates, giving us just a hint of the lives that were lived in this area. Well, every old cemetery has its history, its stories, its secrets, and that way this place is no different. What does make it different, though, is the big monument that's back there up on the hill, and that's really why we came here in the first place. It is a simple monument that doesn't take us back to the frontier days, but to the darkest days of World War II. A young St. Clair County man by the name of George Hoffman was at Pearl Harbor the morning it was attacked. His family feared the worst, hoped for the best. And finally they received a letter from George that began, "I live." His uncle George, a retired farmer, had the monument made for $2,500 and had it placed in the local cemetery.
When he found out that he was alive, well, he wanted to do something, and so he donated this monument to all of the men of Pearl Harbor who survived and those who didn't, and also to his nephew, George E. Hoffman.
Who did survive and lived a long time, I guess.
Yes, and it was only about 4 years ago that the nephew died.
There are, of course, countless war memorials throughout the country. But when this one was placed here in July of 1942, the newspapers said it was the very first Pearl Harbor memorial in the country. After all, we were busy fighting a war we weren't sure we were going to win, and there would be time for memorials and monuments later. Is there some effort to get formal recognition of that? It's almost like a marker that needs another marker.
Well, I guess we better say we've started to get our data to turn in.
That's a lot of work, isn't it?
Yeah, I'll say. And because they're very strict about approving you, and the state has to approve you before they'll send it to the National Archives for recognition. Okay.
But that would just be icing on the cake, really. The real work here has already been done since the Historical Society took over responsibility for this old cemetery. There was a time when the monument and the gravestones were hardly visible from the road, overgrown with weeds and trees. But the spot has been restored with donations of time and money. On this day, Boy Scouts from Bellville Troop 3 and their leaders were helping to trim the trees and clear out the brush along the perimeter. A lot of the scouts probably didn't even know this place was here. But then William Shive, a Bellville native himself, didn't know about it either until well after he was retired and got involved with the Historical Society.
They put me on the board, and I figured that I wasn't any good at dressing those mannequins in lace dresses, so I picked the cemetery as my project.
He has turned over the chairmanship of the cemetery committee to a younger man, but he will continue to work on getting recognition for the first Pearl Harbor monument. And that is the continuing story of this little corner of history.